Yeah, there's music playing in the background. Do you want me to try to go turn that off?
That'd be amazing.
All right, hold on. Let me see if I can figure it out.
All right, so we're getting ready to get started here. We're going to record another session of United Shades of Gray today. We will be talking about, are we as segregated as we used to be? We're going to talk about modern day segregation. Are there some changes to the way that we're segregated? Are the Black community playing a part of this segregation? Or are we just kind of reverting back to the new Jim Crow? That'll be our conversation today, among other things that we'll talk about. We'll talk about the news and what is hot off the press. And we're going to get going in just a quick second. It's recording privately. Only me.
Where does it say that?
On my page.
It says we've got viewers. Oh, hold on. Let me check. WSGW on YouTube. No, we're live.
Okay. Maybe it was just on my page.
Let me check your page. That's Kareem Bowen.
Yeah. Okay, we're public on USG, so we're good.
Okay. No, you're live on yours.
I am now. I changed it.
Okay. Why did it say it was private? That's so weird.
It used to do that all the time. All right, let's get going.
All right. Potting everyone down.
Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on 100.5 and 790 News Radio WSGW and online at WSGW.com. Here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. And of course, I'm sure you guys were hoping that I was not by myself, and that is the great. The answer to that is yes. I have with me in the studio my co-host for today, Mr. Mark Bassett. Mark, what's going on, my man?
Oh, everything's doing okay here. As I telling you earlier, just getting reused to watching two little kids. So.
The wonders of technology. Last week he's here. Next week he's on the other side. He has turned from running a company to now jet setting, taking care of babies all over the country. Mark, congratulations. I do not envy you, my man.
As I told you before, these guys that are my age get divorced and have a new family. I don't know how they do it because it's 2.5 days of watching a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I'm done. So.
You win already. Good evening to those of you who are coming into the social media stream. We want to say good evening to you as well. And you are listening. If you're listening to this live, you're probably watching us on a social media feed. Other United Shades of Gray, WSGW. One of these great feeds. We want to thank you for continually tuning in and listening and having these conversations with us. We want to invite you. Good evening this evening. Rebecca and Jenny Demores, you guys are coming. Please like, tag, and share because we have an interesting conversation that I'm sure will be tantalizing to the ears. We're going to talk about modern day segregation. That's going to be the core theme that we're going to talk today. That'll be where we get after we get through a few housekeeping things. I want to thank you guys once again. This program, if you're listening to us via social media, this will actually air on Sunday on WSGW 100.5 FM and 790 AM as a simulcast on WSGW, and that airs at 7 p.m. So you can tune in and hear this conversation on the radio, or if someone misses it or you hear it and you say, hey, you needed to tune in, this was a great conversation, that's where you lead them to. And you can always come back and get more of the same every single week. We're looking to build an audience to have these great conversations. And the reason we talk about conversations of race in America is because I believe that we can change anything that we can have a conversation about. And that's what my guy Mark is here. He has agreed to be co-host, and he's going to be our reoccurring co-host in here. Good evening to you as well, Miss Cheryl Walker. So please like, tag, and share this conversation. Mark and I are going to have a real good conversation about modern day segregation. And we also have with us my producer, Chandler P, in the place to be. I tried to hype it up a little bit, Chandler.
I appreciate the hype. I love the hype. It gives me the energy to get through the day.
And he is Chandler, you make me laugh, but I love it. I love it. All right, so we're gonna get right into the heart of things. As you know how we like to do. We like to talk about what's hot off the press. What's steaming hot. So today, everybody knows, and Mark, hey, there was nothing going on Sunday after church except the Super Bowl. That was all that there was. And I don't. Did you guys have a particular team that you guys were rooting for, or anybody you like in particular?
No, I don't. I'm a tried and true Notre Dame fan. I don't really follow a professional NFL team. So.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I was rooting for the Los Angeles Lions. Freudian
slip.
Freudian slip. My team was done a long time ago. But it just seems should we just tear down that new stadium and start all over again? I think it's the stadium. Let's build another stadium. Let's go back out to Pontiac. But it was a good game, and I am the type of person. I saw a lot of the playoff games leading up to the Super Bowl, and they were just like high scoring games, electric, exciting throws. But I'm the type of person I like to see a little defense. I was always taught defense wins games. So it was good to see a little defense play. It was a lower scoring game, but it was a fun game to watch. The Rams came out on top, of course, 23-20 against the Cincinnati Bengals, and the world is celebrating OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. With all of his flamboyance. He's got the ring. And I was looking for the blonde hair, and he's walking around with, was it pink hair this time, Chandler? So it was interesting to see that take place. So Chandler, what's going on, man? How are you doing, man?
Me, I'm doing okay. I'm just working hard, making sure all these shows get put up on Sunday. Best part of my week is coming here and recording United Shades of Gray.
All right. So we're gonna get talking. So we're talking the Super Bowl. We know that the Rams won. OBJ. I keep saying OBJ. Yes, Odell Beckham Jr. Because I'm always thinking about the soccer player. And his name is Beckham.
Oh, David Beckham.
David
Beckham. Spice Girls.
Yeah. He's dating not Scary Spice, but Posh Spice.
Posh Spice, I think it is.
Spice.
Not that I was a Spice Girls fan. So.
Do you really want to? Do you really want to? Yeah, but if you want to be my lover, come on. This is sad. But anyways, we're here talking. Sean McVay becomes the youngest coach to win the Super Bowl. I mean, the entertainment was through the roof. I would just like to say from the start to finish, and this is Black History Month. Not that the Super Bowl, every year the Super Bowl is held in the month of February, but we saw a tribute. One of the things that they did in response to some of the cries for some equality was that they made Jay-Z in charge of the entertainment. So was it Rockefeller Records or whatever his name is?
Rockefeller Records.
No, look at Mark knows
a little bit about hip hop.
I told y'all this is gonna be a good conversation. Mark says Rockefeller.
I'm more of an East Coast guy than a West Coast guy, though. So.
Okay, so you're an East Coast guy. Okay, yeah. So you know about Rockefeller Records. But anyway, so they were in charge, and so they did a throwback, and honestly, it was quite interesting. This is the first time in 50 years that football, in terms of the Super Bowl, actually has embraced hip hop. The craziest thing when I saw that number was hip hop has been around for 50 years. Holy moly, donut shop. What in the world? But it was an amazing halftime performance. The entire night, we started off with Mary Mary singing what I consider the staple. They had set the bar as it comes to singing the Black National Anthem. And I posted on that night, they did for the Black National Anthem what Whitney Houston did for the national anthem. She sang the stew out of that song. And it was soulful. She took us to church a little bit. It was classical. And she did an amazing job. And these young ladies, Mary, I've always been fans with them since they were singing songs like "Take the Shackles Off My Feet so I Can Dance." They were always exciting. Then they did an amazing job singing the Black National Anthem. And it was interesting because I'm sure a lot of people were probably like, what song in the world is this? Because it's not heard very often. And then Janae Aiko, which, and I know anybody who knows Janae Aiko, I love her music, but I hated her singing America the Beautiful. I don't want to say what it made me felt like, but I felt like checking myself into a clinic. I did not like it. It was depressing. And so I was not a fan of Janae Aiko, even though she is a great up and coming superstar and has done very popular among artists on the scene today, young folk. I didn't like her rendition. I thought it was too depressing. But we gonna kick it up. Mickey Guyton, the country star, the black country, what she is, the female Charlie Pride of country music. She came through and she sang the Star Spangled Banner, and she did a decent job. I honestly enjoyed just listening and just seeing. It was amazing to see all of this. What did you guys think about the entertainment?
Well, I missed the pregame stuff, so I walked in at the kickoff. I did enjoy the halftime show. I'm not a huge hip hop fan, but I am a hip hop fan. I did, like Eminem. I do like a few Snoop songs. I do like Dr. Dre a little bit.
Everybody likes California Love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, what I thought
huge Mary J. Blige fan, but all in all, I thought it was great. Poor 50 Cent. I don't know who did that to him, but he should be suing somebody for doing that to him. So
I bet you 50 Cent. Someone told me, they said, hey, 50 Cent looked like a whole dollar hanging upside down in there. I almost can guarantee you this was his cinematic idea to come out hanging upside down.
Dick Buckus had the best line. He says, here's a guy that's been impacted by inflation. So.
So it was amazing. The halftime lineup with Dr. Dre. I mean, and Dr. Dre, most people, it was funny because some of the kids were like, who is this guy? Who's Dr. Dre? We're like, those headphones that you wear that you have $350 Beats by Dre. He's the guy.
Great marketing job by him. Great marketing
job. Absolutely. First hip hop billionaire. He's out there on the court entertaining. It was so fun. Dr. Dre, Snoop, everyone knows Snoop because Snoop is everywhere. He's got a new show coming out pretty soon. He's on TV with Martha Stewart. If you can be on TV as a black man with Martha Stewart, talk about smoking blunts and eating weed brownies, you have made it. Drop the mic. It's over, right? So everyone knows Snoop. Then Mary J. Blige, she is iconic, and it's amazing how through the decades she has remained. There's a saying in our community, the black don't crack, and it refers to how they retain the youthfulness, and she looks amazing. I think she's probably the next day after she was probably on some Ben Gay or some of that Icy Hot, because that kick and fall she did was absolutely amazing. Kendrick Lamar, another he's a millennial kind of guy. 50 Cent, Eminem, and Eminem. What about Eminem? Eminem does not come out the house for anything. And to see Eminem perform, I'm like how far in advance did they put this together for him to come? Yeah. Because I think he's locked in his house in Detroit like continuously.
You don't see him anymore. He doesn't come out for anything. I haven't even seen him in like a commercial or a talk show or anything.
So to have
years.
Yeah, so to have him come out was super duper special. So I was excited about that. And then Eminem, he channeled his inner Colin Kaepernick and with the one knee and the protest. And so and that was really a big headline. White guy that's standing up for injustice against black folks. But that's where my man makes his money. That he's a part of 8 Mile. He's a part of that culture. St. Andrews in Detroit, if you've ever been there, where he used to perform. Actually, most of the music is from the video, from the movie, comes from St. Andrews, and it's placed right around the corner from Greektown. where he used to perform those kind of things. So it's really kind of interesting to see him. But he's channeling his inner Colin Kaepernick. And it's 50 years, so it was an amazing opportunity. I was so excited. I was geeked. If you were not at least 38 years old, you probably were kind of lost in the process. But it was all good. But it took me, Mark, it channeled me or moved me from that conversation to thinking like, there's a great celebration of Black music, from gospel to hip hop, the entire gamut, country music, just classic music, R&B, and to see how diverse our entertainment and how it was showcased on the field. And then, I began to think about, the situation with Brian Flores suing the NFL, a lawsuit against their hiring practices. And I'll say this, and I say this all the time, entertainment, Blacks being used as entertainment has never been something that that has never been a no-no. As a matter of fact, you look at when segregation and racism were going on, folks like Josephine Baker and Tina Turner, those guys were doing amazing things. Lena Horne, they were entertainers that were allowed. Sammy Davis Jr. to perform. We've always been allowed to perform, but when we talk about this lawsuit, it's really talking about hiring practices in the upper echelon. 70% of the NFL is African American. Yet, we had 0 coaches. I think we got 3 now. Head coach.
I think it's down to 1 because 2 of them got fired. So
already,
Mike Tomlin is the only remaining employed Black head coach.
So we're holding on by a string. What's going on?
I mean, the interesting thing, I looked at it today. I was interested in how many assistant coaches there were. There's 30 to 40% of the assistant coaches are Black. And like you said, obviously a huge percentage of the league, 70% of the players are Black as well. So,
and you would think, Mark, that it would be a natural progression from someone to come from the field to becoming assistant. I mean, that's what happened in basketball. Kind of has done a great job. It took them a while, but they got it together. A lot of these guys are players. They become assistant coaches, and now they're head coaches of teams.
Yep.
And so it's interesting. But anyway, so the whole thing that comes up there is, Brian Flores, his hiring. He says that the hiring practices are a farce. It's a joke. And Mark, I don't know if you had an opportunity to look up or hear anything, or if you know anything about the Rooney Rule. The Rooney Rule.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know what it is. You're supposed to interview at least one minority candidate, I believe, for any open position. Frankly, major corporations often have very similar rules that you should have at least one minority candidate on your list that you interview. But much of when you're hiring for those kind of roles, hiring for a head coach of an NFL team, people are going to have, I think, a natural bias to hire people they know or have connections to. And so I'm struggling to understand why there's so few Black head coaches. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's not like the pool. There's not a pool of people out there like, hey, I'm a former NFL player with experience. I'd like to be a head coach. There's a lot of them out there, but
and that's why I looked at the assistant coaches and okay, is there a dearth of assistant coaches that are Black as well? And there's really not. And so because I view professional sports naively. I've never been in or around closely professional athletics. You actually have.
Yeah.
But I almost viewed that naively as like the ultimate meritocracy. It's win at all costs. Basically, these guys have a lot of ego and money invested in these franchises. They're not afraid of getting rid of superstars if they think they're past their prime. So I would have naively thought that they're going to go out and get the best coaches they possibly can, irrespective of race, religion, sexuality. They don't care. I wouldn't think.
You would think that would be the case. Now, the thing about it, Mark, is I don't see what the difference is between sports and honestly, getting to that head coaching position, for the NFL, for the NBA, it took a little time, but we saw like the Isaiah Thomases of the world getting that opportunity and really stepping up and doing great things.
I actually looked at the NBA as well. I think they've got 13 now, but it doubled from one year to the next. It was like 7, and then it went up to 13 or 14 now. So I
mean, because it comes down to the X's and O's, and so when we look at this, it brings up a bigger question mark. And you being responsible at one point for hiring and kind of being kind of the boss, the CEO of situations, You know, the Rooney Rule says that I think it's actually 2 individuals in an upper level position has to be considered minorities. And I always feel weird about that because I think that you would want your best people involved. I get it. We want to bring some equity and some opportunities. We want to make sure you get a diverse pool. So I love that idea. But then, you know, it seems like a lot of times we end up checking boxes. And you said, Mark, that we often hire people that we're most comfortable with. And when I look at those things, and I think that that's what happens so many times, not just in the NFL, but in other areas, we hire people that feel comfortable. So, you know, let's get that black guy over there whose experiences are very similar to mine. He grew up on the west side of, you know, the upper west side of, you know, Manhattan or whatever it is, the upper east side of New York. And he went to Cambridge University and he's a good guy. So let's get him. He's a black guy. So
yeah, I don't know that that's what it's about, Kareem. I feel like, again, from my own personal experience coming up through the corporate world,
right.
Like if you're hiring for an important job, and obviously a head coach is an important job, it's not necessarily where they came from. It's more like, have you worked with this person in the past?
Exactly.
And do you think they're good or not? And because a known entity is always safer than an unknown entity. Or if you don't know that person, you know, and so I tend to, you know, and it's just natural to have a bias towards, well, I've worked with this person in the past. He's really good or she's really good. And so I want to hire them again if I get a chance. Or the other one is like, okay, I may not know this person, but someone I really respect knows this person and thinks they're really good. Yeah. Because it's basically, you know, one what's that, 6 degrees, 1 degree of separation kind of a thing. 1 degree of separation of because it's always better, it's always safer to hire kind of a known quantity than an unknown quantity.
But that's what I'm saying, Mark. I think in many cases, you know, when we look at it, and when I say the good old boys network, I say if you don't look like the people that are in power, and when I say look like, I'm not just talking about physically look like. If you don't have that same DNA, you're not a part of that system, if you're not comfortable, if they don't know you as you were coming up through the ranks, how do you break through those ranks? And then it becomes, you know, the idea that we are looking for some diversity, but you've got to open up those pool waters to fish in bigger ponds, so that you create a pond of diversity. And so that you're not just checking boxes, but you're looking for people who qualify. And I think the diversity, and you said this on last week, Mark, and I don't think that we really chimed in on it, is that diversity is not only in the color, but it's in, you know, how are your ideas different? How are your experiences different? And that was one of the things when you said that, I said that's a powerful statement. That's why we get along, Mark, because it wasn't about what I look like on the outside, because when you were talking about, you know, creating some diversity out at HSC, but it was like, how are your experiences different? How do you view things differently? And I think that that's when we really get diversity down pat, instead of just checking boxes. Because a lot of times I'll tell you, they'll put black men in there who are black on the outside. We used to call them Oreo cookies when there was Oreos. Black on the outside, white on the outside. But I mean, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, I can say, but this is real conversation. And so I think that you hit it right when you say, you know, we have to look not just on their race or their ethnicity, but we also have to bring in that conversation about their life experiences and those other things. All right, we want to let's really quick. We got 3 minutes. Tyler, how long is this video?
We got another 24 minutes. Oh, the video that we're gonna play here.
Not the video.
We got it's just about 40 seconds long.
Okay, we're gonna watch really quick. Those of you who are watching us via social media, we're gonna throw this video out. So when you watch this, and if you're watching this in its replay entirety, you'll get a chance to see it. Those of you are going to be listening to some of the airway, we're going to try to kind of coach you through it and let you know what's happening. And we're going to have a quick conversation on the other side of this about this. That first, we went a little long in the first part, but I think that's interesting conversation. You want to go ahead and cue that up, Tyler? All right, there's this video that took place in New Jersey, Bridgewater, New Jersey, at a Bridgewater Township Mall. There's an 8th grade young black kid, and he's getting into an argument with a high schooler. And, you know, the high schooler is pointing his finger in his face because he's the bigger guy. The older white kid is quite a bit bigger, and they're getting into it. They start getting into a fight. So you're like an 8th grader, probably a 9th, maybe a 10th grader. He doesn't like to be a senior. They get into a fight. The fight breaks out. They're throwing each other around. Police officer comes in, male police officer grabs the young black guy, puts him on his chest. The female police officer comes in, she pushes the young white kid down on the sofa, tells him to stay. Then she goes over and puts her knee, who's already got a male officer, and he's on his stomach with his hands behind his back. She puts his knee on her back. And so this is what we saw take place in Bridgewater today. I was given this by one of our listeners, and they told us to take a look at this. And so when I saw this, you see the I'm not going to say what you said, but you see the older high school guy pointing his finger in this young kid, get your hands out my face. He then pushes him, and the brawl ensues. But this is just an interesting situation when we talk about bias and we talk about how things are seen. Things are very different in many parts of the world, and we don't know the backstory to this. I'll tell you that right now. But this is under investigation, and the New Jersey governor, Phil Murphy, came out and he said that he was troubled by what appears to him to be a racially disparate treatment by the police officers. We're going to take a quick break in a little bit, but I want to come back because when we look at this, there is this continual situation that we're seeing over and over and over again of videos popping up of these situations. And I think that they merit some conversation. Are we in a position that we really need to kind of think about how policing and police officers, this is mall cops, how they're acting and what role they're playing in young black men's lives, and what does this look like? And the thing that was so annoying about this is that as a young man, black man was handcuffed and on the ground, the young white kid, the high school kid, came over and he's standing over him, looking down at him, and they allow him to get up, and he's never handcuffed. The white kid's never handcuffed, and he's just looking at him like, what do you think is getting ready to happen? So we will begin to take a look. Yes, they said that it appeared to be racially motivated. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back. We'll talk about this and more with more United Shades of Gray. All right. So where are we plugged in? Are we online? Can they hear us still?
They can hear us
All
right now.
So we're going to get in here. We're going to take a quick break just to set up for the second half of this show. And we're going to get into this. We're going to have our spotlight on here. We're going to come back and finish out that conversation. We'll do a spotlight on Black History Month. And I like to bring a fact. Then we're going to talk about, modern day segregation. And I think this is going to be interesting conversation for you and I, Mark. Mark, who's from Midland, me, who's from the hood in Saginaw. Nah. We'll have this conversation and we'll be right back. All right.
I never told you this. Or you can't hear me. Can you hear me?
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
Hey, this is Kareem, and you've tuned in to the second half of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. And I'm here with Tyler P. in the place to be, my producer. And we got with us also Matthew. Matthew. Now I've called you Matthew. I'm calling him Lance. I'm calling you Matthew. What is your name? No, Mark Bassett. My he's very
all us white guys look alike, Kareem. Come on.
Yeah. You know what they say. Reoccurring co-host here, Mark. I appreciate your patience with me. Before the break, we saw a quick video. What was? And I'll ask you, Chandler. I want you to, chime in here. You're a younger guy. What were your thoughts concerning the video? I sent it to you. You saw it as well.
Clearly, it looked like there was some antagonizing going on, and you told me, yeah, you weren't gonna call it what I said, what I called it, and I won't say it here, but the finger in the face is just like, that's just an antagonistic move. Somebody who's innocent doesn't do that, and he pushes that hand out of the way, and they start the scuffle, and by the time like mall security gets there, the kid in question who got arrested, he's on the ground. I don't like, my first thought isn't to stop the kid on the ground when I see something like that getting pummeled. I'd stop the guy that's standing up, right?
Right.
And all they did was pull him away and like, here, you sit on the couch, and then we'll take care of this guy. And it's like, he didn't. I don't know.
And so the issue, like I said, we don't know what the backstory was, but based upon the information that we see from this video, and as I said, there is an investigation going on with this. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out and what they really do about this. Mark, what were your thoughts when you saw this video?
Oh, much the same. I mean, again, you and I spoke a little bit ahead of time. I don't love these kind of videos because you don't know what happened before or what was going on. But clearly, it looks like there was a disparity in how these kids were handled. What motivated them to handle it that way. You can draw some conclusion if you want. I mean, that's what they'll determine through the investigation.
Absolutely.
But like you said, there seems to be a kind of a steady stream of these sorts of videos that kind of continue to come out, which is sad and unfortunate.
It is, and I think I'm looking at this, and as you're playing, Chandler, you're playing this again. I look at how cocky this, the kid stands up while the other kids, they're gonna arrest you. And it just speaks to, there's a very big difference with how young black men feel about police officers and young white men feel about these things. And it is continually, I don't think these videos are going to make it get better. I shouldn't say the video, these situations, because this video occurred because there was a situation, and that situation continues to happen. And so I remember growing up, and this is something that's so interesting, and I don't know if you guys ever had a situation like this, but my mom I got coached on how to act when the police came around. Like if the police come around, you do this. When you get pulled over and you're in your car, put your hands on your steering wheel, make sure your driver's license. And these are not things that people should have to deal with, from people who are supposed to be there to protect and serve. And I am particularly tired of seeing it happen. And from what we saw, and Mark, I'm going to disagree with you on this. The backstory on this doesn't matter so much unless they were saying, hey, this kid had a gun in his pocket and he's toting it around. If that's not the situation, it was the treatment that the officers showed upon their arriving to the scene that becomes the biggest issue. But I'm going to lay that, because that's going to come back. I guarantee we're going to talk about that again as more story and more information comes out. But I want to get to the spotlight on Black History Month. Mark, you actually told me you learned something last week, and that just motivated me to do something and talk about something else this morning. But each week we want to share during the month of February, which is designated Black History Month. We want to share something. So spotlight on Black History Month. I don't know what that word was. Slaves built the White House, Capitol, and other key buildings in the Capitol complex. It was never been a closely held secret that enslaved African-American people were a vital component of the workforce that built the White House and the United States Capitol. But the role of enslaved people in the building of great national symbols has generally been overlooked until recently. This role has been widely ignored until First Lady Obama, if you remember, in 2016, during her Democratic national speech, she says, she was so great to wake up in a home that slaves built. And of course, Google went crazy, like slaves built the Capitol. But the fact of the matter is, the slaves did build the Capitol. These individuals were people that were enslaved. Now, my family, and I found this out recently, were enslaved in the DMV area. And when we say D, we're talking about Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. And we came from tobacco farmers there. We were sold by Jesuit priests to a sugarcane factory and sugarcane plantation, excuse me, in Maringouin, Alabama, which is where my great grandparents live. Our family estate and family, all of that stuff is down in Maringouin, Alabama, Louisiana, Maringouin, Louisiana. So these people were from the DMV area. They were leased. Now listen to this. They were leased labor to the Capitol building. So I mean, they hired slaves, but the slaves didn't get the money. They paid the slave owners for the labor that the slaves were doing as they were building much of the Capitol complex. So the Capitol building, the White House, and other buildings that were on that main thing, they were done by slave labor. And recently, I think it was March of 2012, they have now created a space in the visitor space where there's a piece of Portico Creek stone, and they have it symbolic of the stones that those slaves used in order to build the Capitol building. So it's an amazing story. And I continually tell people this nation was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of my ancestors. I say that continuously. And so as we have a conversation, Mark and I have had this conversation. We're going to have it here on the radio as we talk about the word reparations and what that means. We view this differently. And so we're going to have that conversation because I think it's important. And there's, you can't always have that conversation with people that, don't respect each other. So I respect him. He respects me as a man. And so we can have that conversation, even though we differ in terms of what that means. All right. So we're going to get to today's conversation, which is segregation in America. And I know our time is fleeting so fast, but I want to get to this. And Mark, basically, I think the concept of what we talked about is that, Jim Crow never left. Slavery didn't necessarily leave, but it evolved into something else. We saw us go from slavery to Jim Crow, which puts many of those slaves back on those same plantations, working now, making no wages and living in conditions where the slave owner didn't have to take care of them because they were indentured servants, if you would, or servitude. But anyway, so we saw that happen, and we saw these Jim Crow laws that came out that segregated us. Schools, buses, whites only, drinking fountains, restaurants couldn't sit at downer counters. We saw all of this stuff take place. And now we march in the 50s and 60s for equality and, all of these other things. And now in 2022, we see, I think, emerging probably since about 2012, a change taking place in terms of the dynamics of and the fabric of our country. And so my question was, are we as racist today as a nation as we used to be? And I got that question from my guy, Art Lewis. Art, I was on his show earlier this week, and he asked me that question. Kareem, do you think we're as racist as we used to be? What do you think, Mark? Do you think we're as racist as a nation?
Out of curiosity, what was your answer?
My honest opinion is, I don't think that we as a nation are as racist as we used to be. I don't believe that. I do believe that there's a lot to be desired. I believe that there is yet a lot of racism that exists. However, I don't think that our nation is as pervasively racist as we used to be. And I think that probably the majority of us, when it comes to, being able to be, to provide equity and be fair with people, that's what our desire is. Now, how that functions out is a whole different story. Sure. But I don't think that what are your thoughts, Mark?
Well, yeah, I frankly would largely agree. I mean, it's an interesting question to ask what many people would consider a privileged white guy. I mean, I've lived very few places where there's a large African-American or Black community. But just by definition, it's got to be, right. I mean, slaves don't exist. Jim Crow laws don't exist. You look at the amount of professionals. What's that?
I think that's the thing. Because I think President Obama, he mentioned, or he labeled these new voting regulations as kind of like he sees them. And there's a book about it, The New Jim Crow, those regulatory elections. And Jim Crow was really about denying access, and denying equality. And
Yeah.
so there is a vein that is.
Yeah, I guess I would argue, is that about race, or is that about one party trying to win and they know who their demographic is that's going to vote for them? That's what I would argue those laws are about. And so I would argue those aren't explicitly racist. Those are about trying to maintain power, so that you're preventing people, you don't, making it harder for people who you think will vote against you to vote. And it's got nothing to do with race, is what I would argue.
But when you look at that, Mark, who are the people that the individuals that are targeted are African American and minorities. And so when you look at these policies and how they restrict voting, they resemble and reflect the exact same types of policies that we were dealing with under Jim Crow, with the voter IDs. That was a big one, voting IDs. And so when you're restricting rights, that does mirror Jim Crow. And when we look at who is being targeted in these populations, it's usually African Americans, Latino, Latinx, Hispanics, and immigrants.
Right. I guess it's a matter of semantics in a certain sense. I think, for me, the Jim Crow laws were explicitly racist. It was about race. This is really more about, it's frankly, I would almost argue, is it's socioeconomic. You're basically trying to exclude a socioeconomic portion of the population from voting because you think they'll vote against you. And it's not, I don't know that it's implicitly racist. I don't think it's explicitly racist. And that's the difference.
No. I think you hit the nail on the head. It is, you're right. It's implicit. It's implied. It's implicitly racist. It's not explicitly racist. And I think that when I started off this section and I started talking about slavery didn't end, it evolved. When we look at what has taken place, we see, the fact that there was racism and that there was a rule that says you can no longer be racism. That was a law that did not change people's philosophies, their ideologies, or even their heart sets. So it still existed after these laws had taken place. And so when we look at the Ku Klux Klan, and my grandfather was chased by the Klan down one of the back streets of Maringouin, they changed in those white suits for business suits. And so now we see a racism that is, like you said, it's implicit, but it's not explicit, which I think is more dangerous, because we can imply racist tendencies and thoughts and outcomes, but we're not going to be implicit in our practices. At least let me know you're racist, then I know how to deal with you, right?
Sure.
So I think that becomes a real issue that we have to deal with. But I want to talk about how we as a nation and how we as a nation have become what I think is, we're kind of getting to this place of this great divide. And I would say that it's the crazy thing is that if you would have asked me 10 years ago, could I see myself ever one day being a Republican? I would have said absolutely. I could have seen that. I mean, there are some things, the agenda, some of the concepts, about abortion and marriage and, all of those things I agree with. A lot of those things I believe in free enterprise, the opportunity to control your own future. I agree with a lot of those things. But now I could never in my life see myself even being affiliated with that party, because there are two parties that exist right now. I guess our freer parties on the fringe parties are both crazy on both sides. But there's one party that is trying to stop people from voting. There's one party that is kind of mirrored and connected themselves to, the David Dukes of this world and white supremacists, and has had trouble disavowing those things. And it's kind of problematic to me, because a lot of my views up until this point have been very consistent. When Donald Trump first decided to run for president, I met Donald Trump, it's been years ago, at an All-Star game. And he was there, and I mean, there were people of all colors and race, because it's an all-star game. Everybody black on the basketball team, So, I mean, let's be real.
Well, there was a European white dude there. Come on.
Yeah, of course, we did have the Dallas Mavericks in the house, so they did have the Europeans that were in. I'm just joking, but I think Steve Nash was in the game, and all. I mean, there's some of these white guys were beasts on the court, and it was a different thing. So I'm like, I remember that guy. And seeing what he
what out of curiosity, what was that guy?
He was not he was someone that was considered, I would consider, an outsider as it related to politics. He was a guy that was, moving and shaking. Now, the Central Park 5 situation, his conversation, it's not like he has never said things that were, but you could see him and yeah, come on, everybody got some things that they don't like. And he was on the wrong side of the Central Park 5. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, Mark. The young 5 boys who were accused of rape by this white woman.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that story.
Yeah. So he was like, oh, they should hang him up, kill him and send him to prison and all this stuff. And these men turned out to be they were exonerated because they were wrong long after they were in prison. So there was that thing. There was always his treatment of, his housing staffs and things of that nature. No one, and just his, but you see it everywhere else. So it's not a big deal. But I'd never seen, and the stuff that he said about women was one issue. But when it came to race, it just seemed like he began to divide our nation in a way that we became our worst selves. And I think that when you add fear to the unknown, it creates a dynamic that causes us to distrust each other. And like we were talking about employment, we're going to connect with the people that we're most comfortable with. And so now I see this dividing of America. And Art asked me this question. I want to give this question to you, Mark. He said to me, Kareem, do you think that, I want to throw it out there. He says, do you think that, Black people have a part to play in this, because we want, the Black national anthem saying, we want Super Bowl to be about hip hop. We want, I don't know, we want the Black version of this, Black Wall Street. And so he asked me that question. Do you see that as being problematic? And Chandler, I guess if you have a particular opinion, you could chime in as well.
I guess I don't see it as a problem. I understand. I mean, why Black people would feel that way, and because they've been marginalized for a long, long time. And but I also do think that every problem, there's multiple things that cause that problem. And I do think the community needs to ask itself, like, well, why, we were talking about like the Asian community, and a lot of Asians have immigrated here and they've done very, very well, and they've integrated well and they're very successful. And, why is that? And I do think that while, obviously the Black community that's been here, especially descendants of slaves, there's a much different history and everything, but I think it's a fair question to ask. Well, what are you doing, and why is it in the situation that it's in? And so that it's not just one-sided solution here. I don't think the federal government or the state government or corporations can solve all of these problems. That it's a one-sided solution. It's a two-sided solution here.
And I guess you're laughing, Chandler. What's going on?
Well, I'm thinking about it. It's like, I don't have an opinion on this, but like I do. When you suffer from like systemic racism, you create communities of your own, and you set up, like, you start doing well on your own, but suddenly from high above, the rules change. Suddenly people come in and get angry about a Black Wall Street, and then suddenly a highway needs to be built over a Black neighborhood, and suddenly things like that start happening. And then people just want to, toss it, sweep it under the rug and be like, well, no, that's just price of progress, I guess. It's like, no, that's systematically wrong, right?
Absolutely. But you said it better than I could have said it, Chandler. I think that that's one of the things that the broader part of America does not understand about Black America. It's not that we want something that doesn't belong to us. It's not that we don't want to work hard. It's not that we don't have the ability to do those things, because history shows us that, we've had these periods, and Black Wall Street is only one example of that. And when left alone, how we thrive as a nation. But it's the fact that the goalposts continually change. And I'll tell you, as a young Black man, I grew up in a community where, and my mom, she would say, hey, you got to go out here and you got to work and you got to be twice as good. And I don't think, very many white parents are telling their kids that, because they don't have to deal with the things that are intentional, but not necessarily explicit. And so I have to make sure that when I go out and I present myself, that I'm doing so in a manner that there is absolutely no clue, no question that can be garnered that I am the best in what I'm going to do. And I've had so many situations like that occur. But you're right. I continually feel, and I think Black people feel, that the goalpost is always changing. And so, when we look at those things, I think that it's important. So my question about segregation today, and Mark, do you feel that Black America is becoming more segregated in terms of a natural segregation where you see things where like, hey, they kind of want to stay to themselves? And because that was one of the questions that continually comes up.
Yeah, I don't know that I think that. I think, again, I think people tend to like to be with people that they're similar to them, so like, again, I went to Notre Dame, which when I went, it was like 95% white. And, all the African-American kids or Black kids, they tended to hang together at dinner, just like, all our guys from the dorm hung together at dinner, and
absolutely
a lot of the Asian kids hung together at dinner. I go to colleges and I still see that phenomenon. So people tend to want to hang with people that are of similar backgrounds. But I almost think the segregation is, again, I tend to think of it more as socioeconomic than anything else, or I don't know that anything else, but I think that's where the real segregation sits a lot of times in this country, not necessarily racial.
And Mark, what I will say to you, and I agree with you 1000%. You and I had a conversation. I'm gonna bring that up in just a half a second, but I agree with you because when we look at where we are today, I'm doing this program and I have these underserved, kids from Black and brown communities. And, there was this one white kid that applied and wanted to be a part of the program, understanding what it was. And so, he fit the bill. We let him, why? Because he was economically in a disadvantaged situation. Now, a young white kid, it becomes a lot like a young Black kid when it comes to the US of A. Now, there is a difference because if he gets out of that economic status, he can easily put on a tie and then be accepted in the larger population. But if you're, in certain areas and you're in certain communities and, not to offend anybody because there are wonderful mountain homes, but we usually call you're from a particular trailer park or you're under a lower economic place, then you get treated and you get the same kind of justice as a Black man. And so I agree with you on that. You made the statement, and I agree with you 100%. That our main issue, my thing that I'm most concerned about is, yes, I want equality in the system. Yes, I want there to be the diversity. Yes, I want to be included. I want you to invite me to dance. I want you to ask me to dance once I get there. And I want you to play some songs that I like every now and then. Okay. But the other thing that's important, and this is something that's going to be a whole conversation, Mark, that I think that we should get through, is this conversation on the wealth gap. And you also identified that as being one of the most important issues of the day that we need to address as it relates to equality, because there's such a big divide in our country as it relates to that.
Yeah, I read a few articles where it's basically bigger than when you had the beginning of the industrial age, when you had the Carnegies and all of those people, and there's this huge wealth gap, and you could almost argue all of those workers for those people were indentured servants. It's kind of reopened to bigger than even then. So that's a big issue. I would agree.
Yeah. So I thank you for this hour goes by so fast in our conversation, Mark. I greatly appreciate you being here and co-hosting with me today. Chandler P in the place to be. I thank you for all that you do. And those of you who are listening via social media, I thank you guys for tuning in. Like, tag, and share this conversation. This is United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America.